Episode 33, Dealing with Secondary Infertility, an interview with Lindsey Brady. All right, hi everybody, I'm Lindsey Clyde, I'm your host. This is the Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast. Before we get into our episode today, I just wanted to talk about connecting. If you want to follow along with what is happening with the Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast, you want to be on Instagram. I try and do the Facebook stuff, but man, it is so difficult for me. So mostly you'll find me at Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast on Instagram, and also the Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast on Facebook. But really what I would love is to hear your thoughts or what you want to hear about on the podcast. Please just email me. You can do that by sending an email to learnliveloveyourself@gmail.com. Okay, that's the best way. I would love to connect with you. I feel like social media is like meh, but emailing, that's the way to go. I love making personal connections with my listeners. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. All right, on to your regularly scheduled content. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Lindsey Clyde, and this is the Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast, where we learn who we are, live true to who we want to be, and love ourselves better every day. If your passion is progress, then you're in the right place. Each week, we tackle pop challenges that push our limits and create lasting change. Are you ready? It's time to grow. Come learn, live, love yourself with me. Lindsey, thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so happy to talk to you.
I am so happy to talk to you. When you reached out over Facebook Messenger, I just thought that is so amazing that you offered up yourself as a story to say like, hey, I'm willing to be open and share my story. So, okay, before we get into that, let's go back. Give us a quick snapshot of your life and recent background, anything that's applicable to this topic.
Yeah. So I've been married to my husband, Hunter, for 8 years in the spring, which I feel like we got married maybe around the same time as you guys. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's right. I was in May. What month were you guys?
March.
Yep. Right after each other. Congratulations on 8 years.
You do. Yeah. So it's been upcoming 8 years. We do have a little boy. His name is Ty. And it took us about 6 months to have Ty. But that was almost 5 years ago. So he will be 5 soon. But I will say for about 3 years now, we've been dealing with something called secondary infertility. For those that aren't familiar with what secondary infertility is, I mean, you can pretty much like gather what that is. But essentially, you're dealing with not being able to get pregnant after you have previously given birth to a baby.
So it doesn't matter how many times you've been pregnant before. Like if you're experiencing infertility now, it's considered secondary infertility. Is that right?
Exactly. It can be if you've had one or more children previously. If you can't have any more after that, it would be considered secondary infertility. And for myself, I've actually never gotten pregnant in the 3 years that we have been trying. So that's kind of a gist for us. I haven't gotten pregnant since having my son.
So by that you mean like no miscarriages in the meantime?
Yes, no miscarriages in the meantime, exactly.
And so you've been trying for three years now, right?
Yeah,
that's what you mean by that. And so when you knew it took you at least 6 months to get pregnant the first time. So after 6 months, was it kind of like, oh, why aren't we pregnant yet? Or how did that all come about?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we had been trying for like 6 months, and I had like a regularly scheduled, OB yearly checkup. And so I went into that appointment for my checkup, and I had mentioned, hey doc, it's been like 6 months. Nothing's really happening. I feel like it should be happening already. I told my doctor some symptoms that I was feeling, and my doctor at that point suspected something called endometriosis. So if people don't know what that is, because people have heard of it. It's hard to, if you've never had to deal with it, it's kind of a confusing thing. But what endometriosis is it's usually your endometrium is supposed to line the inside of your uterus. But when you have endometriosis, it lines the outside of it, and it can line your ovaries and even your organs. So it's not very good. And for myself, I I was in such a state of denial, I think, back then, that I didn't even go home. Like, I didn't even go home and look it up. I was like, no, no, that's,
Oh.
that's not what it is. Like, that's how like unaccepting I was that there would be any issue. And so I just didn't even look it up. And, we just kept trying, and, it magically happened. We got pregnant. And, my son, yeah, he was born on New Year's Eve. I guess that's kind of where it begins. And like, I always had this feeling that this issue would kind of creep back up, like they told me I might have an issue, but then I had a baby. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, issue solved. I don't have a problem anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And, so for me, I always had this feeling, though, kind of in the back of my mind, that it would resurface. But I had a baby, and then he turned into a toddler, and it was just out of my mind. I didn't think about it. Plus, a lot of people told me, like, once you have one, your body just knows what to do. So, even if it was hard for you to have your first one, your body will figure it out again, and you'll be fine. You're going to have no problem for your next one. And I took that to heart, and it helped me when I had those issues kind of in the back of my mind of, is this going to happen again for us or not? And so it really was kind of out of my mind for a long time. And then when my son turned 2, we decided it was, just like a lot of people, you're like, oh, it's probably time to try for another one, but I think what was hard is, this time around, the magic, it didn't magically happen. And I guess that's kind of been our lives, for the last 3 years. So since he was 2.
Wow. I mean, 3 years can go by in a flash in different stages of life, but I'm going to make an assumption and say, like, has this been a very long 3 years for you?
Oh, it most certainly has been a very long 3 years, and especially that first year of quote unquote trying. That was probably one of the longer time periods for me, because most doctors just tell you for that first year, we really can't do anything yet. So just try. That's the answer you get, is just keep trying. And so it's been a long, yes. To answer your question, yes, it's been a very long 3 years.
That sounds infuriating.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Just keep trying, and you're like, what do you think we're doing?
I am trying. Yeah.
I already am doing that. Give me something else.
No.
What am I paying you for?
Exactly.
So at what point after having Ty did you think, like, okay, so they made you wait for a year, and then what was the next step? What was the next thing to do after you've waited for a year of being unable to get pregnant?
So testing, there's a lot of testing that occurs after you've been trying for a year. We started with my OB and did testing, the testing that he wanted us to do. And basically it was just to check my husband's sperm and to check my fallopian tubes, just to check. Basically, it's just checking like that the mechanics are all working correctly. And for us, they were all working fine. And that just adds more frustration to the mix, because if the mechanics are working, why isn't it happening for us?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you begin with, is you just start doing these preliminary tests of checking to make sure the mechanics work.
And then after the results come back saying, like, hey, actually there's nothing wrong these things, like what's the next step after that?
So when you do that first, and every OB is different. I'm not sure exactly what, all I can say is what I did. But after they check your tubes to make sure that they are healthy, in that process they flush them out so that they're really clean and clear, and your chances of getting pregnant, they go up for a few months after you get that test done. So just even the test can help get your chances up a little bit. And for us, we were so certain. We're like, that's going to help. That was what was wrong. Okay, we did it. So great. And nothing. We were still trying and nothing. And so it was sometime after, probably like a year and a half. It was sometime at that point that we decided it was time to see a fertility doctor. Which, it isn't just like, okay, I'll just call a fertility doctor and I'll get in. It's not like that, because fertility doctors are high in demand. So it took us 6 months to even get in to
Really?
the doctor.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously you keep trying in that process, while you wait to get in. And in that time, there's so much denial that's happening in that time. Like, you think I remember thinking to myself, like, there's no way I'm going to have to go see a fertility doctor. Like, I'll for sure get pregnant, before it gets to that point, like that's just when they tell you the appointment is 6 months away, you kind of, in my mind, I was kind of like relieved. I was like, okay, I have 6 more months to get this done. It's going to happen. And so as my appointment kept getting closer and closer and closer, that denial kind of starts to creep in, like, this can't be. This can't be. I can't believe I'm actually to my appointment. I can't believe I'm walking into my appointment. I can't believe we're sitting down and talking to him. This can't be.
Yeah.
And I think that it just takes a great deal of acceptance, this part of it, to actually admit that you need to go to a fertility doctor. I don't know, you just get to a point where it's not going to happen on your own. And that can be really painful emotionally for a lot of people. I think for myself, it was one of the hardest steps to take in the whole process, was just accepting that this was our reality, that we have to go to a fertility doctor.
And were you pretty open about this whole situation all during this time, or did only like close friends and family know? What was it like for you?
In the beginning, I was very, very, very private about it. Very private. I think I wasn't probably up until probably about a year ago, or maybe like a little over a year ago, that I was actually comfortable enough to open up about it on social media, to be open about it publicly. And I'll be honest, it's like probably one of my regrets is not opening up sooner about it. But at that point, when I was seeing a fertility doctor, the only people that knew were close friends and family. That's it. Nobody else.
So you say it's one of your biggest regrets. Tell me about that. Why do you regret not opening up sooner?
Oh man, because fertility is it's such a dark thing for a lot of people, and people like to keep it in the dark. People don't want to talk about, women, I guess I'll say women like to keep it in the dark because, for various reasons. If it's, they're embarrassed. I think for me, I was slightly embarrassed. Like, my son was getting older and older, and, you do your best not to compare, but of course, you see people having their second child, their third child. And so you slowly become a little bit quieter and quieter about it, because socially it's not normal for you to just not be having anymore. And so I think for myself, I kept it in too long. It didn't need to be kept in so long, because the minute I was open about it, the minute I couldn't believe how many people opened up to me about their struggles about it. And so for me in the beginning, I think I was just, I was in denial. Like I said, like I didn't want to accept that that was what was happening to me. I wanted to just believe that it was going to magically happen like it did before, but this time it wasn't. And I think I was just sad. That's another part of it. You just don't want to talk about it. And I don't know. I think there was also kind of a perfectionist part about it where it's like, no, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I can do this. And so that a lot of that stuff plays into why you decide to kind of stay quiet, I think. And for me, it's just the more I've talked about it, the more support I've had, the more love I've had, the more connection I've had with people. And so I say that I regret not having that sooner when I probably really, really needed it in those kind of darker, earlier days.
Yeah, totally. And it's almost like if I were in your situation, I would probably think, well, if I don't say it out loud, then it's not really happening, you know? It's not real as long as I don't speak the words, which is not true, but we trick ourselves.
Oh, we do. We definitely trick ourselves. And we also just, there's nothing wrong with, you want what everybody else has. So there's nothing wrong with that. Like I wanted what everybody else had. I wanted children. I wanted my family. I wanted it to look kind of how I wanted it to look, just the way everybody else does. And I think that's just part of it too. You just start realizing, okay, this is not looking anything. This isn't looking anything the way that I thought it would. So, yeah.
And what kind of impact has this journey through secondary infertility had on your marriage? How has it affected you and Hunter, like your relationship?
Um, it can be incredibly heartbreaking for a couple. And each couple handles it very differently. For my husband and I feel like it really has only brought us closer. It's never really been, like it's your fault or my fault kind of situation. I feel like it's always just been like we are weathering this storm together. Um, I know especially with we haven't even talked about this yet, but I know with everything that I'm currently doing, IVF, everything that entails, it's hard for him to see all that my body goes through. So I know it's really hard on him to watch that because there really isn't anything he can do. It's all me. So I don't know though. To me, I've learned in my 8 years of marriage, I've learned that with everything that we've gone through, there's nothing more beautiful to me than looking at your spouse and saying, I'm not doing okay. Can you help me? And I feel like that's really what we've done. This whole thing has allowed that to kind of flourish in our house, that ability to look at each other and say, I'm struggling. And I know it's definitely strengthened us for sure.
How would you, like, if somebody is listening to this podcast right now and they're thinking, this is getting really hard for me and my husband, and I don't think we're handling it very well, what advice would you give to someone who is thinking that?
I would say first and foremost, you're probably handling it better than you think.
Hmm.
And that there is first and foremost to always be talking to each other about it. I know there were times where I was silently suffering through some things, some emotional things. And it wasn't until I finally told my husband, I'm struggling, I need you to help me, that we were able to reconnect on some things. But I definitely feel like if a couple right now is saying, we're not handling it very well, I think that the first thing you need to do is look at each other and say, are we connecting about this? Are we talking about it? Is this like a silent problem that we're not talking about? Because I think just talking and connecting with your spouse about it provides so much relief through the pain. Because there have been times where I've needed to talk some things out about how hard this is, and times where my husband has needed to talk some things out about how hard this is. And in the end too, like if therapy is what you need to get through some of these hard conversations, by all means, I'm such a supporter of that. So there's options out there, but I think the first thing I would do is just to make sure you're looking at each other and talking about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think sometimes My husband, Steve, bless him. I love him. He'll never listen to this episode, so I can just say that. Just kidding. Steve is a silent sufferer. He carries a lot of weight that I have no idea he's carrying.
Yeah.
And I could see him, if we were ever to have this particular trial, I could see him silently carrying his side of the burden. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I think it's so important to try and just work through those talking points, because even though we're not struggling with this right now, it's still hard for him to share. So at a crucial time, like dealing with infertility, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally think that's amazing advice.
Well, and too, like, I think people need to realize too that respect that men also are saddened by it just as much as women are. I think that's a common misconception that, because it's quote unquote usually not happening to the husband necessarily, as it is more so happening to the wife, that, there's this assumption that they're not feeling that pain as much as like the wife is. But I would say to be careful with that assumption, because I know for um, my own personal life that this has definitely been painful for my husband. It's been painful for him in many different ways. And so, just because it's kind of like a women's issue, per se, it's definitely, don't count them out. They definitely, it's hard for them. It's very hard for them, just as much.
Yeah. And so you mentioned IVF. So after seeing the fertility specialist, they was the next step to say like, okay, you're trying IVF, or was there something in between that?
Yeah, like once you get to the fertility doctor, they, their treatment is tailored to what the problem is, like what the cause is, which was a big reason why I was actually kind of, I was excited to get to a fertility doctor, because I was really tired of not having an answer of the why. It was kind of killing me. I needed to know, like, what is going on? Why is this not working? So for me, I my personal with my personal issues, I ovulate every month, so I wasn't having an ovulation problem. The mechanics were all working great. His sperm was working fine, and so my fertility doctor, he had just kind of a few different suspicions, nothing concrete, but just some suspicions on what it could be. So he wanted us to start with a procedure called an IUI, which basically, they just take the sperm and they inject it like straight in. Um, and for us, we were like, okay, if that's what you think we should start off with, you're the specialist. So we just we put it in the Lord's hands at that point. We decided, we're just going to trust this process and go with what he wants us to do. And it was also at that like initial appointment though that my fertility doctor had mentioned endometriosis again.
Hmm.
It was kind of like that thing that was kind of in the back of my head, like, oh, he mentions that too. Like, I wonder if it's a thing. I wonder if this is actually a problem now. And the minute he said it, I kind of knew that's what was wrong. And endometriosis has a lot of symptoms, and I didn't have any of them. And so that was a big reason why he said to not go forward with any sort of surgery, just because, it could be, but I don't think that's the problem. And so, we just trusted it. We just trusted the whole process, and we did that procedure, that IUI, and nothing happened. In fact, I found out it didn't work on the morning of my 30th birthday. I'll never forget it.
Oh no.
It was kind of when my husband and I, we were on a trip, we were on vacation for my birthday. And, I woke up that morning and it obviously it didn't happen. It didn't work out that I didn't get pregnant. And, it was kind of one of those scenarios. You almost kind of laugh at it because you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm on a vacation with my husband. I
Yeah.
just turned 30. We were in New York. It was like this like wonderful thing. And then I woke up on the morning of my birthday and there it was. And I was like, oh man, it was one of those moments in this whole process where I was just like, you know what? I am going to walk out of this bathroom and I'm going to have a great day, because I could just sit here and cry. I could sit here and ball up and be devastated, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it today. I could do it tomorrow, but I'm not doing it today. And so that was hard. That was really hard.
Wow. I just want to stop and just like, I can't do that finger snap thing, when they like shake their hand and go whoosh, like with their fingers. I wanted to do that just then because wow, like that is intense, like self-talk that you gave yourself. I am so, so proud of you. That is one of like the defining moments of your life. I don't know tons about your life, but that moment says so much about you and your character, Lindsey. That is amazing.
Thank you. I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but it was, it's just one of those times in your life where you're like, I could choose to do one thing, but I'm going to choose to do the other thing right now and enjoy my birthday with my husband. So, I mean, it wasn't easy, but, so that didn't work out. And then I knew it was this endometriosis thing. It felt, it definitely is probably one of the moments in this whole process where I knew God was telling me like, this is probably what it is. And so in December of last year, I got surgery for this endo. And going into surgery, I was just praying. I was just praying that there was something there. The thing about endo, sorry, I'm saying that for short, but the thing about endo is you don't really know you have it unless you undergo surgery. So it's kind of like an act of faith where you're like, okay, there is something there. And because I didn't have any symptoms, my doctor was like, I just don't know. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but it's the next step. And I just said, I feel like it's the right thing to do. I can't totally explain to you how I know, but I just know. I know that I need to get this surgery done. And so underwent surgery. And then I came out of surgery and all I could hear was my husband just saying, Linz, like you had severe endometriosis. It was everywhere. It was so bad. You had it everywhere. And I couldn't help but cry. I just couldn't help but cry because I was so happy to finally have an answer. Like, why? Like, finally, and people, as I was recovering, would just say, I'm so sorry to hear that, you had this issue, this endo, and it was so bad. And I'm like, you know what? For me, it was an answer, finally a concrete answer. And so it felt so good. It felt like the first time I finally had some hope that we could fix something and try something else, So that hope was something that I hadn't had in a long time.
Wow.
And, recovery was like, it was really difficult coming out of that kind of surgery. But after a couple weeks, we were really eager to start trying. So just like that test I had on my tubes with when you get this kind of surgery, you're really fertile again for a few months. And so we were really eager to try. And it was not happening. Nothing. And I would say probably at this point was when I was the most devastated. Just because I knew in my heart that I would never conceive on my own again. And that was hard. I did it one time. I have living proof that I did it. He's walking around talking to me every day and asking me for goldfish. You know what I mean? Like I had proof that I could do it. And yet I knew I could do it again. But after so many months of trying after this surgery and it still wasn't happening, it was at that point that we kind of knew that we probably weren't going to conceive on our own again. In fact, it's kind of funny because there was like one night when I walked in to my bedroom and my husband was laying on the bed and I just said, you know what? I'm like, we gave it an honest shot. I've done all I can do. So let's go pay some doctors to just help us make a baby. Okay. I'm like, let's just throw in the towel. We've tried our best, but let's move on to the next step. And I think that's kind of, in a humorous way, that was what we both needed to kind of just go, okay, you know what? We did our best, but now it's time to move on. It's time to move on to the next phase. So in May of this year, we sat down with our fertility doctor again. We did find out that all of the endometriosis had actually damaged my fallopian tubes, so much so that I'll probably never be able to have an egg pass through there again, which is you need that to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So, so that at that point in May is when he said that he recommended that we do in vitro fertilization, so IVF. And that's been the last 6 months of our life, is going through that process. And it's a process. It is you. I mean, Lindsay, you could do an entire podcast on just
Really?
IVF support. It is. Oh man, I don't even know how to explain it to people. It is. It's like the biggest mountain that I've ever climbed in my life. And I don't know. I've told people have asked me a little bit about IVF because I'm a lot more open about it now. So some people that have reached out to me about how they're struggling, they've asked me about IVF, and if I'm being totally honest, I tell people, if you're not in a good place, do not start IVF, because gosh, it just strains not only your finances, but it strains your emotional well-being, and of course it strains your body most of all. So it's a lot. It's a lot of shots. It's a lot of doctor's appointments. It's testing. I've gotten my blood taken. Like, I can't even tell you. I can't even count how many times I've had my blood taken. Of course, the shots and the medications. I've had to get some prep surgeries. So that endo surgery wasn't the only surgery I've had. I've had 2 more. And then just the egg retrieval, when they take your eggs, that in itself is an event and it's hard. And so it's just a really big process, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
Like, I'm just listening to you talk about this. I had no idea. I had no idea. People toss around the word in vitro or like the acronym IVF, but I had no idea how
Yeah.
involved it is. In my simplistic, like, naive mind, it's just, oh, let's just like take this little sucker tube and like, there's your eggs in this tube now, and then we'll put it in a petri dish and then use that same sucker tube to, like, put it back in. I
Right.
don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but honestly, that's horrible. And I mean, and month to month.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, I was naive going into it. I think for myself, even, I was like, okay, well, we'll start IVF in May, and then, I'll do my transfer. Shoot, what, in a couple months? Was that how it works? I had no idea it was going to be this long, that it would take this long. And I had no idea just the prep work that it takes to do something like this. And I think too, that's what's hard, is it lengthens everything. You just think to yourself, I've waited so long and I've done so much, and we've now made it to this part, and then you still have to do so much before you finally get to the point where you can transfer. And so it's so much prep work that I was definitely naive to how much it is, and just honestly how much that it affects you. And like I said, you could do a whole podcast on just how IVF is, but it definitely is. It is one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing that I've had to go through.
What is the green light? Like, what are you waiting for to be able to do the transfer?
It just takes everything. It's funny. This was the one thing where I'm like, I don't know, I'm joking, where I'm like, there's so much technical advance. So why does it take so long? Why does
Yes,
everything take so long?
totally.
Yeah, it just does. Testing, a lot of things get tested. So once they take your eggs, they have to then test them. And that takes weeks to do that. And then they require that they are frozen for a little while. And so, I mean, there's a lot to the process, and it's a very, very like detailed process. It has to be done a certain way. It has to be timed out a certain way. And again, things I didn't know about until, and nobody does know until you go through it yourself. I had a nurse actually when I at my fertility clinic. I had a nurse, and I was kind of having kind of a hard time at just when you're in the beginning stages, you're getting your blood taken so often, almost every day for a couple weeks, and you're getting ultrasounds done like every couple days for weeks on end, and so it kind of gets rigorous. You just kind of get really tired of it. So I was sitting in an appointment, and I was talking to the nurse. I told her I was kind of having a hard time. My body is tired. And, she told me you're kind of experiencing something that only a small group of individuals will ever have to experience. So you need to breathe through this because it's going to take a toll on you. So just breathe through it. And the way that I've gotten through most of it is my mantra has been one day at a time, one day at a time. You get ahead of yourself so much. You want to get to that next step. You want to get to that next step. And for myself, I've just had to tell myself just one day at a time is all you can do.
Wow. That's so beautiful that the way she put that for you.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about your relationship with your body. Like, what are the things that you tell yourself or you used to tell yourself, or did you ever catch yourself having thoughts that you needed to cut off? How has that played out for you?
Well, I think in the beginning, I definitely was mad a lot. I felt like that my body was failing me, I guess, in a sense, or just that my body is not doing what the Lord intended my body to do, which was to like have children. And so I think for me in the beginning, I was definitely feeling like my body was weak. My body, wasn't capable of doing things. My body is not strong, failing, kind of a failure almost. And which plays a really hard mental toll on you. And so that's how I felt in the beginning. But I'll tell you what, in all that I've had to do since, that first year, I can definitely say, man, I got a strong body. My body has gone through so much, that I am shocked at how much that my body has gone through and is still standing, right? I'm still able to handle all of this. And so I have definitely grown over the years to be very accepting of that this is what my body is doing. And then also just growing to understand, my body is very strong actually. It can't do this one little thing, but in all the things that I've put it through in the last couple years, without a doubt, it's very strong, and I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that knowledge that I can now say, you know what, I'm strong.
What has your spirituality done during these things? Like, your relationship with God, what has that looked like in these last 3 years?
I'll be the first to admit that my faith hasn't always been strong in this process. I think in my dimmest moments, my faith really felt like it was just this tiny little flame coming out of a match, And for the most part, on most days, that's all I could muster was just a tiny little flame to like make that next step forward. And I've struggled a lot with my faith in the last couple of years, just being angry with God, being angry with my Heavenly Father, just with really, I've definitely had to, in a really hard way, learn what faith really meant to me. I don't know, I would kind of be really snarky sometimes after church. I would tell my husband, I'm like, if one more person tells me just to have faith about this whole thing, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose my mind, because people would tell me, like, just have faith, just have faith. And for me, my mind would just say, I don't know what that means. You're telling that to me. but I don't know what that means for myself. And, I would definitely say that my faith has gone on its own little journey. And, what I can say now about having faith is I think it's just a deeply individual process. I don't think it's something that can be explained with a 1 or 2 sentence answer. It's not binary. It's not something where it's like, what is faith? And then you have the answer. I think that for me, it's been a very personal path that I'm taking with my Heavenly Father. And I also think it's a path that's just as individual as each of us are to our Heavenly Father. So there really is no right answer. It's a very deeply individual and personal path. And you have to make that path. You have to make that journey with your Heavenly Father. And that's how you do it.
So, since telling you just have faith is not a good thing to say, what can outsiders do? If someone's listening to this podcast who knows someone who's struggling with infertility or secondary infertility, I mean, I know it's probably a very personal thing, but what are some more tips? Like, stay away from saying that. What else? What else would you put in that list?
Well, and you know what? I kind of say that funny, but I think it's definitely something that people would tell me to make themselves feel better. And I don't fault them. When somebody talks to you about something that you kind of don't have any familiarity with, you give them that answer of, it's okay. Like, just have faith, because faith has helped me. And I don't blame people for saying that. It's a beautiful thing to say to people. For me, though, it was not helpful. I guess I'll just say that. It wasn't something that I needed to hear. And, when you're talking to somebody that's dealing with infertility, they really could be anywhere along that path of acceptance. They could be anywhere along that path of understanding. And so, I don't say that so that people shy away from anybody that's going through infertility, because you don't want to ever hurt their feelings. I think that the one thing that I could say is the biggest thing you could do is just validate is like the biggest thing that you can do for somebody. If you know somebody that's going through it, the best thing to do is just to validate whatever they are feeling, whatever they're feeling. For myself, there've been many times where I've been angry, times where I've been heartbroken, times where, I felt like a certain path was the right path to go on. And in each of those times, I just needed someone to listen to me. I just needed someone to be there. I think any of us feel that way. Whenever anyone is going through anything that's painful or hard, we just want to feel heard. I think for me, the thing that you can do best for people that are going through infertility is just to be someone that is just, you just say, I'm here and I hear you. I'm here and I hear you. I don't know exactly what you're going through. And I've had plenty of beautiful people in my life that have said, I don't know what you're going through, but how can I help? And I hear you. And that has been the most helpful thing for me, because I don't expect people to understand. No way. Like, I don't expect you to have to understand it if you haven't gone through it. So the best thing I feel like I can get from people that truly love me and that really want to know what they can do is just listen to me, just listen to how I'm feeling. And then also just to be that empathizing kind of person and just say, like, I don't know, I don't know what you're going through, but I can only imagine how hard this would be. I can only imagine how I would take it. That kind of stuff is healing.
So what is one thing you wished the whole world knew about infertility? If you could put one thought or one message out there, what would it be?
Oh gosh, it probably is that all that they really need is to feel heard. All these, infertility is kind of one of those things where you hear people in your life are dealing with it, but that's kind of all you do about it. You just kind of go, okay. And I think that the best thing that you can do really, if I could just shout it out, is just to be a good listener, just to listen to these people. If it's your friend, if it's your sister, if it's somebody that you love in your life, is just to be that listening ear for them. And because you can't fix it, you can't make it go away for them. You know, you can't do anything about it, and neither can they. A lot of the times, like, it's just something that they're dealing with. And I think the best thing that you can do for these people, and it's a lot of people, Linz, it's a lot of people. The more open I've been about it, the more I'm shocked to see and hear how many people are going through this, that are silently suffering through this. I've had many people, many women tell me that they just don't have the, whether you want to call it strength, or they don't have the capacity to be open about it. And so they are silently suffering through it. And it's just it's such a dark thing for people. And so I think the best thing is, you know, is just to be that listening ear for people.
So, one question I want to know is, like, in the early stages of infertility and even like now, month to month, since like having a period is already such a horrible thing. I feel like it just takes such a toll on your body,
Yeah.
but to have that compounded, not like only physically is it difficult, but emotionally, month to month, having that period roll around. What is some advice that you have to give to people who are struggling with infertility or newly struggling with infertility about getting through the month to month or the failed pregnancy tests? What's your advice? What has worked for you to help you keep taking it one day at a time?
Gosh, this is when I think about other women, this is when I get emotional thinking about it. I'm sorry. Um, I would say that to somebody that's going through infertility, I would say, first and foremost, friend, I see you. You know, like, wherever you're at on the path, I get it. If you're not accepting it at this moment in time, I get it. You know, like, if you're mad at God right now, I get it. You know, you're devastated that this little idea of what your family would look like and it's not happening. I get it. Whatever you feel right now, you have permission to feel that. You know, I know the pain this brings. And I listened to this podcast once that she talked about how she needed this pain that she was going through. She didn't want it to go to waste. And that's kind of something I would say here. You know, don't let this pain go to waste. You've got to use it any way that you can to grow and to learn more about yourself. I guess just there's times where you really can't go on, where you feel like you really can't go on. I felt that. And that's where I've really kind of had to say that mantra, just one day at a time. I can't tell you how many times that I've had to say that to myself, just one day at a time. I would also say to somebody that is currently going through it, or maybe in the beginning, is to be more open about it. If you're comfortable, you know, share about it on your social media, you know, with your friends, with your family. I think because the more that it's talked about, the more that women feel like they don't have to suffer alone anymore. And I say that because I suffered alone for far too long before opening up. You know, and the moment that I did open up, that is the moment that I feel like I gained that strength that I needed to carry on. And that is kind of what I would tell somebody right now that would be listening to this, that's going through it.
What resources have been helpful to you other than, the normal things that someone who goes to church would do, of like reading scriptures, saying prayers? I know you've talked about opening up to your spouse, to friends, to family. What other resources have been helpful to you?
You know, everyone's different. I think for me, this whole process has really put me on a journey to find more out about myself. And so I think for myself, a lot of encouraging, positive type of self-help podcasts and self-help books. I can't even tell you how many books I've read in the last couple of years. Just about bettering myself is really what I was interested in, to get through some things. I think that obviously reading general conference talks, like conference talks, were really helpful to me because, well, the apostles and the general women leadership of the church, they have so much insight into these hard things that people deal with. And so conference talks would always be something that gave me that little extra push that I needed. And just with my own personality, humor, I needed humor. I needed something that wasn't so infertility focused all the time. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have not read a single infertility book at all. Not to say that they're not good. I'm sure they're beautiful books and I'm sure they're wonderful and helpful for a lot of people. But for me, it consumed so much of me all the time that when I needed to turn to something that would help me, I turned a lot to things that weren't infertility related. I needed humor in my life. I needed that. I will say that without a doubt, the Lord has put in things into my life, resource wise, that I needed when I needed them. You know, a talk here or there, or an article here or there when I was really needing something like that. Just kind of something to help me go, okay, like the Lord's aware of me and I needed to read this today, or I needed to hear this today. And all along the path, those kinds of things were helpful for me.
Last question. This has all been so fantastic. Just like I said, very humbling, very informative. I have loved listening to you talk about this. So the last point, I mean, it probably is going to hit on some things you've already said. If you just sum it up, how has going through this process of secondary infertility helped you learn who you are, live true to who you want to be, and love yourself better every day?
I think for myself, I can look back right now and I can say that I can say with a great deal of confidence right now, there was no other way for me to learn exactly who I was without having to go through something like this. And this kind of trial, much like a lot of trials, you know, for me, this going through infertility, going through everything that it entails, it really does, it breaks you down. It breaks you down to the very details of who you are as a person. And you kind of just learn to rebuild who you are from there. I think for myself, I've learned just how resilient I can be. I don't know. I've learned just how strong I can be. I've also learned that in the times where I'm not strong, in the times where I don't feel very resilient, what I need, you know, when I'm suffering, what I need. And I definitely think that this process has helped me learn about my relationship with my Heavenly Father. You know, I went from, you know, yeah, he's there, you know, he sees me. Okay, I get it. I went from that to, you know, wait, I'm not so sure anymore. I don't know if he's there. Where is he? You know, and then going from that to very beautiful experiences of knowing that he is right there. It's really just allowed me to see myself more clearly in my Lord's eyes. And that's been a very beautiful thing to experience.
Linz, can I give you a virtual hug? Hug over the.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for being here and doing this. And like, I know saying all of these things doesn't change your situation or lessen the load at all, but man, am I grateful. And I'm sure there are so many other people out there who are so grateful to hear your words and feel your testimony and see your strength. So I'm with you. I'm in your corner. I'm here supporting you, praying for you. And keep us updated. Keep us updated in all the ups and downs.
I definitely will. Thank you. And thank you so much for just shedding light on this. I think that, you know, the more and more light that gets shed, it just encourages women to bring it out of the darkness And when you bring it out of the darkness, that's when we can help each other out. And that's really what we're here for, is just to help each other. So yeah, thank you.
Wow, who is feeling it? I'm feeling it. Wasn't that perfect? I am impressed, and I am so grateful for Lindsey for opening up about such a difficult topic. I really hope that this has done something for your understanding, whether you're going through secondary infertility or somebody you know and love is going through this. I really hope that we can spread the word and give more support to these beautiful, wonderful women and families who really, really need it. All right, the pop challenge for this week. The pop challenge is this. If you are going through secondary infertility, your challenge is to reach out. You don't need to plaster it all over Facebook and Instagram, but please find someone who will listen, who you can share this burden with, because we are here as your friends. We want to help and lift you, okay? And we just don't know how. Be brave and feel out, who could you possibly talk to? Who would be able to hold this with you? And if you aren't dealing with secondary infertility, my pop challenge for us is to find somebody who is and be that listening ear. Practice validating them. Just be there for them and say what you are going through is totally okay. Whatever stage you're at, it is totally fine. All right, as we do this, as we lift each other as women and as friends and family, we are going to see a difference. I love you guys. I hope you had a great holiday. I'm Lindsey Clyde. This is the Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast. Check me out on Instagram or just email me at learnliveloveyourself@gmail.com. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Love ya. Bye.